Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Nine people have been injured in what Theresa May has described as a sickening terrorist attack on Muslims in North London. One man died, though he'd collapsed before the attack, and the cause of his death isn't clear. Now, it happened outside the Muslim Welfare House shortly after midnight. Many of the victims had been taking part in evening prayers after breaking the Ramadan fast. A group of people had been helping a worshipper who'd fallen down just off Seven Sisters Road. That's when a van mounted the pavement and drove into people. Bystanders tackled the driver, holding him until police arrived to arrest him. A 47-year-old man, understood by the BBC to be Darren Osborne from the Cardiff area, has been arrested under the Terrorism Act. Daniel Sanford is live at the scene. Daniel.
Yes, George, we've now entered the last week of the holy month of Ramadan. It's a month of fasting during the day and coming together as a community to break the fast and pray at night. But last night, on a sweltering summer evening, the Muslim community here in Finsbury Park was brutally attacked. And my report contains both distressing and flashing images. It was just after midnight in London, and the third attack using a vehicle in just 3 months. This time, the Muslim community was the target.
Basically drove on the pavement, coming straight towards all the Muslims, and as he's coming to them, he hit all of them.
After the van had crashed through worshippers marking the holy month of Ramadan, leaving 8 badly injured, men who'd been to late-night prayers found themselves wrestling the suspected van driver to the road.
When he was on ground, I asked him, why did you do that? Why? Innocent people. He goes, I want to kill Muslims.
After a prolonged struggle, the suspected driver was arrested. The Imam had intervened to prevent further violence, and the suspect had been handed over to some of the first police officers to arrive.
Why do you do that? Why?
We flagged them down. We told them the situation, that there's a man, he's restrained, he mowed down a group of people with his van, and there's a mob attempting to hurt him. If you don't take him, God forbid, he might be seriously hurt.
What we proceeded to do with about me and about 20 other people was lift the van, and the man who got his leg stuck under it was able to get his leg out, although he was in a critically state. He was really bad. He was bleeding from his ears and the rest of his body.
The 47-year-old suspect is believed to be Darren Osborne, a father of 4 from Cardiff, a man unknown to MI5, but somebody who police are now investigating for any extremist or racist views he may have expressed in the past.
Can Britain take any more terror, Prime Minister?
By lunchtime, the Prime Minister had arrived close to the scene of the attack, visiting Finsbury Park Mosque, one of 2 whose worshippers were caught up in the violence.
The terrible terrorist attack that took place last night was an evil act born out of hatred, and it has devastated a community. I'm pleased to have been here today to see the strength of that community, coming together, all faiths, united in one desire to see extremism and hatred of all sorts driven out of our society. There is no place for this hatred in our country today, and we need to work together as one society, as one community, to drive it out, this evil that is affecting so many families.
The Prime Minister's visit came just over 12 hours after the van ploughed into a group of worshippers. Theresa May clearly wanting to be seen among the community that was attacked as soon as possible. Jeremy Corbyn, who's the local MP, was up much of the night talking to his constituents.
Thanks for coming.
And visited the scene with the Labour Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. Throughout the day, the enormity of what had happened appeared to weigh on the shoulders of politicians from all parties.
This is a terror on the streets, and it's a terror of the people in the streets, in the communities I'm very proud to represent in Parliament, and that's why I'm here today.
All around the politicians visiting, a huge police forensic operation was underway. The focus, this white van rented in Wales. It had turned off the main Seven Sisters Road into a cul-de-sac, hitting the worshippers as it went through. Some of them had been treating a man who was apparently suffering from a heart attack. He later died. It's unclear if he was hit by the van. Either way, he was the only person who died here last night.
This was quite clearly an attack on Muslims who looked like they were probably Muslims and they were coming from a prayer meeting. We treat this as a terrorist attack, and we in the Met are as shocked as anybody in this local community or across the country at what has happened.
In this year of terror, the Muslim community of North London was a new target, but the consequences of the violence were the same. 8 people are still in hospital this evening, some with potentially life-changing injuries. Daniel Sanford, BBC News, Finsbury Park.
Well, as we heard, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner said this was clearly an attack on Muslims. Communities have been calling for increased action to tackle the growth in Islamophobic hate crime, especially since the London Bridge attack. Extra police have been deployed on the streets to reassure communities. Our religious affairs correspondent, Martin Bashir, reports.
With temperatures and tensions rising in this multi-ethnic part of North London, the chairman of Finsbury Park Mosque offered words of unity.
An attack on one faith is an attack on all faith and communities. Those who try to divide us and who aim to spread fear, hatred and division will not succeed.
Statements from all the major faiths echoed these sentiments, with the Archbishop of Canterbury describing this as a crime against God and humanity. While religious leaders have condemned this attack in unison, many in this community are angered by the media coverage and what they say is the rush to connect acts of terror with Islam, but a reluctance to do so when the victims are Muslim. As news of the attack began to spread, the anger only increased.
I was here on the ground for 2.5 hours, and the anger was stemmed from the fact that news outlets, BBC News, Sky News, were calling it major incident, a minor incident, car collision. Let's call it what it is from the get-go, because if it was any shade darker than white, they would call it a terrorist attack. So let's call it what it is, and I'm glad that we're starting to take those steps to call it what it is.
Now no one feels safe. We can't go to the mosque without looking behind our back. Like, who's going to want to go mosque now? Like, we have to look behind our backs. Just to practice our religion, we have to look behind our backs. We're living in fear. Like, we shouldn't have to live like this.
As he spoke to reporters, Community Secretary Sajid Javid was interrupted.
As a Muslim, how do I keep my son and I safe? Because we don't feel safe at the moment. I didn't even want to send him to school.
Well, first of all, I'm a Muslim. I have children, and I know many members of the community across Britain that will express a very similar feeling to what you've just said.
Sajid Javid tried to offer some consolation.
This is my community, and to hear all these things happening in London, as a Muslim, you feel so pushed out.
Other faith leaders argue that if Muslims are being asked to help in the fight against radical extremism, then the least they deserve is fairness when they become the victims.
I think Islamophobia probably has lurked below the surface for a while, and I think sometimes incidents like this happen and it brings it to the surface. And I think the community leaders have a real responsibility to speak out and say this is not acceptable.
Those community leaders will now play a central role as people in North London respond to this latest terror attack. Martin Bashir, BBC News in Finsbury Park.
So, as we've been hearing, the BBC understands a suspect to be 47-year-old Darren Osborne. Let's join Sian Lloyd, who's outside his house in Cardiff. Sian, what more can you tell us?
Well, George, there's been a heavy police presence outside this property in a very residential part of Cardiff for most of the day. I've spoken to the next door neighbour. She told me that the family had been living here for some 10 years, that Darren Osborne has as a partner and 4 children. The children would often be seen playing in the room, and she described them as lovely kids. She said that he was quite quiet, he kept himself to himself, but that he would sometimes help neighbours with DIY, and we understand that he'd actually changed a tap in a neighbour's property yesterday morning. Now, the other connection is that around 16 miles away from here there's a car van hire company. Its branding was on the van that we've seen in the pictures there used in the attack. I've been there today. That company have put out a statement describing their shock. This community have said how shocked they are, and people here really, it's still very much sinking in.
Sian, thank you very much.
In the early hours of this morning, terror once again returned to mainland Britain. A van was used as a weapon to mow down Muslim worshippers after Ramadan prayers. One man is dead and several others are in a critical condition in hospital. As he was restrained, the suspect reportedly shouted that he wanted to kill all Muslims. ITV News understands he is a 47-year-old father of 4 from Cardiff who wasn't known to security services. The Prime Minister called it a sickening and said it was an attack on all of us. Our security editor Rohit Katru's report has some upsetting images.
The suspect is surrounded by the same worshippers who'd been targeted. Muslim men who'd broken their fast and had gathered to treat an elderly man who'd collapsed. For a 4th time in 3 months, police responded to a terror attack. But this time the victims were targeted for their faith. This time the suspect was taken into custody. And as he was, an imam urged the agitated crowd to search for restraint. The arrested man was shielded from the ferocity of feeling. But he waved to the camera phones as he was taken away.
This is deliberate. They did it on purpose. It's something, he wasn't drunk or anything like that. One of the men was dead straight away. He was over 60 or 70 years old. We tried to give him the first aid, but was already passed away.
The sun rose on a morning that was as dark as it was bright. It is not clear if the death on this street was a result of the attack here, but those who tried to save him did save others by subduing the attacker.
He came back to us, and he was saying, shouting, I want to kill more Muslims, I want to kill more Muslims. And then there were other people running after him, trying to catch him. And then he came towards me, doing some punches on his hand. Luckily, I tackled him down to the ground. I don't know how I managed, but he fell to the ground, and I prayed, that there's no more blood after that.
Despite the high tempo of attacks, the Prime Minister has never had to speak from here about Islamophobic terror.
Today we come together, as we have done before, to condemn this act and to state once again that hatred and evil of this kind will never succeed.
Prime Minister, what's your response to the attack?
And after accusations of indifference last week, she made an at times uneasy journey to the scene.
Prime Minister, what do you say to the people who did this?
She followed Jeremy Corbyn, Labour leader and local MP, and Government Minister Sajid Javid, who tried to comfort the afflicted. The London Mayor has done all this before, but his city now appears to have been hit by the rise of the far right.
The intention is the same, to divide communities, to make us stop leading the lives that we do.
But the motive
I've been briefed.
Is different. The motive here is different.
Sure.
Have we underestimated the threat from Islamophobic extremism? I
receive regular briefings from the counter-terror team, and the good news is the counter-terror team have for a while now been recognising there are terrorists who are motivated by other means other than Islamist motivation.
So this city picks itself up again, But response then resilience is a cycle that is now too familiar. Rohit Khatri, ITV News, North London.
Well, our Wales correspondent Rupert Evelyn is outside the suspect's home in Cardiff. So Rupert, what have you been able to find out about the suspect?
Well, neighbours here in Cardiff said that they were extremely shocked this morning when they saw images of the man they believed to be Darren Osborne flash up on the news and of course on social media. He was initially arrested for attempted murder. Since he's been questioned, he's been re-arrested on suspicion of the preparation, commission and instigation of acts of terrorism, including murder and attempted murder. That is obviously of a deep concern to everybody who lives in this area, and equally to his mother, who ITV News have spoke to just a little bit earlier today.
I'm not going to defend him, but it's my son, and it's a terrible, terrible shock. And it's not just robbing the bank, or it's an atrocity. And I just, at the moment in time, I can't cope with it. I can't.
Well, in the house behind me, where Darren Osborne lived with his partner and his 4 children, police from the Metropolitan Police have been there all day, and also officers from the South Wales Counter-Terrorism Unit. Darren Osborne is described as a family man, and obviously for many of those people here to be linked with what's happened in Finsbury Park is a deeply worrying time.
Rupert Evelyn in Cardiff, thank you. Well, our security editor Rohit Khatri joins me now. Now, Rohit, what are you hearing this evening about this?
Well, unlike the last 3 terrorist attacks in the UK, the investigators here are really starting with a blank sheet of paper. There is no file at MI5 with this suspect's name on it. He was not one of the 20,000 or so subjects of interest to MI5. That's a list that includes thousands of jihadists and Islamist extremists, but also many far-right extremists too, and he was not one of them. But what investigators do have this time, which they didn't have in Manchester, they didn't have after London Bridge, they didn't have after the Westminster attack, is a living suspect to question. That interrogation continues this evening, and of course investigators trying to establish whether the person who carried out this attack was being influenced by others and whether they were acting alone.
OK, Rohit, thank you very much indeed. Well, among those rushing to help the injured last night were 2 friends who had just finished prayers. They arrived at a scene of carnage, and then one of the women realised her brother was among those injured. Sejal Karia has the story of their ordeal.
I left the mosque to go and get food, and we hear screaming, people shouting, restrain him, restrain him. And as we get closer to the scene, it was clear that there was casualties on the floor.
Friends Nasima and Marwa had just finished nighttime prayers at the mosque when they were confronted with scenes of terror. They rushed to help the injured. Nasima went to a woman before learning her brother had been hit by the van.
The woman that I saw, I rushed towards her without even seeing my brother on the floor. As soon as she told me, she's like, "It's your brother," I couldn't do anything for the woman. I got someone else to take over. I just went to my brother. He was having issues breathing. He couldn't breathe, he couldn't move. It's literally, I'm seeing so many people on the floor, all injured and all hurt, and you just feel helpless because there's nothing you can actually do.
The dilemma of who to help compounded Nasima's anguish about her brother.
When I saw my brother, I was traumatized. I couldn't believe it until I had to look at him and I was like, "Is it you?" He's like, "Listen, I'm fine. Don't worry about me." But obviously I can see that he's not fine. He's finding it really hard to breathe. Literally, I had to rip off his jacket, rip off his t-shirt. I had to give him water, put water all over him, just to calm him down.
The friends no longer feel safe in their local neighbourhood.
The mosque cross is a peaceful place.
It just makes you think, like, if that's happening somewhere where we're supposed to be safe, where is safe?
The mosque, a place of worship and safety that last night became a place of fear. Sejal Karia, ITV News.
Well, mosques were today promised greater protection as police reported an unprecedented anti-Muslim backlash. There's been a spike in hate crime following the London Bridge attack, with much of it Islamophobic. Our international affairs editor Raghi Omar reports on a community in fear.
Finsbury Park is one of the most diverse communities in what is already a hugely diverse capital. Muslims, Jews, Christians, as well as those of no faith live side by side here. Today, an interfaith group accompanied by the local MP, Jeremy Corbyn, went to the spot where the terrorist attack took place.
An attack on one faith is an attack on all faith and communities. Those who try to divide us and who aim to spread fear, hatred and division will not succeed.
The Finsbury attack comes against a rising backdrop of Islamophobia in the country and the targeting of Muslims, particularly in the wake of terrorist atrocities carried out by Islamists. Since the London Bridge attack, police have recorded 5 times more Islamophobic attacks than in the same period last year. On the 6th of June, days after the London Bridge attack, 20 incidents were reported in London alone, compared to a daily average of just 3 incidents a day last year.
The reality is plain to see. For example, I was in the mosque on Friday, just 48 hours beforehand of this critical incident. Members of the public there from different parts of the globe were telling me that they had suffered more hate incidences. They were targeted more, particularly after terrorist attacks in Manchester and London.
But even as the Finsbury community comes to grips with the attack in their midst and tries to unite to defy such hatred, the reality is that for many Muslims there is a growing sense of fear and alarm about far-right extremists.
You think this is a British community, or you might have British Muslims?
Groups like the English Defence League have tried to expand their messages online, especially in the wake of the London Bridge and Manchester atrocities.
They want to destroy our way of life.
We realised that online the hate against mosques was just spiralling out of control. And we realised that mosques are going to be, unfortunately, they may be attacked. We could see the far right focusing their energy and venting their anger against mosques.
This attack has delivered what British Muslims feared the most, and the guarding of mosques is now becoming a reality. Raghi Omar, ITV News.
This was the kind of incident that everyone feared. In the wake of a series of Islamist-inspired attacks in London and Manchester, last night came an attack on Muslims. A van hitting a crowd who just left evening prayers in this month of Ramadan. 1 man died and 10 were injured. In a moment, a report from our correspondent at the scene of the attack. But tonight we've learned more about the suspect who was arrested. Let's go over now to our Home Affairs correspondent Andy Davis, who is in Cardiff. Andy.
John, there's been a police presence here in Pentwyn for much of the day. This is a suburb in the north of Cardiff. And we know that the Wales Extremism and Counter-Terrorism Unit have been helping the Metropolitan Police with their investigation. So they've had officers involved, and several neighbours here have identified the man seen in those images at the Finsbury Park Mosque last night as a local here, a 47-year-old man called Darren Osborne. He's reportedly from the southwest of England originally, but apparently has been living here for at least the last 5 years. We don't know a great deal about him other than he lived here with his partner and 4 young children. Does he have a job? I've asked a lot of residents here, what does he do? Tell us a little bit about him. But they don't know a great deal about him. And when I've asked people to sort of describe what sort of character he is, there's been a fairly sort of mixed response. 2 of his neighbours are Muslim, and they've both expressed astonishment at the developments overnight. And one of them, who lives immediately next to him, a convert to Islam, has said that he just seemed a particularly sort of ordinary bloke who lived next door. Her children used to play with his, and the children would mix between the 2 houses. So a lot of astonishment at this area being potentially linked. But of course, this is very much a live investigation, and I should stress at this stage, no one has been charged with any offence.
Andy Davis in Cardiff. So now to the attack itself. It came as a group of Muslim worshippers finished prayers here in Finsbury Park shortly after midnight last night. The group had left the Muslim Welfare Centre close to the Finsbury Park Mosque and had stopped to help a man who had collapsed when a van apparently swerved onto the pavement into the crowd. The collapsed man died and 10 others were hurt. Our correspondent Fatima Manji arrived at the scene of the attack in the early hours of the morning and has spent the day piecing together the events and the reaction.
Pulled out of a van and pinned down, moments after he appeared to drive it into a crowd. injuring Muslim worshippers who had just left a mosque in Finsbury Park.
There's a police here, don't worry, don't worry.
Eyewitnesses said they heard him shout, "You deserve it," and "I did my bit." Having witnessed family and friends hurt in this way, some in the crowd are angry and upset, but restrained by others, including the imam, who insisted it must be the police who deals with this. Amid commotion, he's bundled into police custody. Some in the crowd later told us of their shock as they believed he was laughing at what he'd just done. And watch this reaction as he sits down. A wave for the cameras. This is the resulting carnage. 8 people hospitalised, 1 man dead. The events began as an elderly man had collapsed and a group of people were giving him first aid. The van ploughed through them and then hit others walking along the street. The victims are thought to be of different ages and races, but all Muslim.
People was very angry. They want to attack him, and some people want to say, "Oh, calm down, don't touch him."
Well, at that time, you know, there was quite a few people around him trying to restrain him, you know, and so forth, waiting for the police to arrive. And there were also people who were trying to rip him apart. And there were people who were saying, "No, wait for the police to arrive."
Was he saying anything? Could you hear
No,
that?
he was, I don't know. I don't think he was in a position to say anything after what he had done.
This man says his cousin is one of those injured.
Who came, lifted to the van to help him, a bit of panic, and police were responded quite quick.
In the immediate aftermath, confusion and rumours of multiple attackers on the loose were abound.
Now, police were called here to the scene at 20 past midnight. We know so far that 1 man has been arrested, possibly the driver of this van.
Later in the morning, the Met Police confirmed there are no other suspects and that this man wasn't known to security services. He's being held on suspicion of the commission, preparation or instigation of terrorism, including murder and attempted murder. In Cardiff, where the van was hired, neighbours believe the driver is 47-year-old Darren Osborne. By early afternoon, the Prime Minister had arrived. Conscious of criticism she received in the immediate aftermath of the Grenfell tragedy, she sought to quickly reassure.
The terrible terrorist attack that took place last night was an evil act born out of hatred, and it has devastated a community. I'm pleased to have been here today to see the strength of that community, coming together, all faiths, united in one desire to see extremism and hatred of all sorts driven out of our society. There is no place for this hatred in our country today, and we need to work together as one society, as one community, to drive it out, this evil that is affecting so many families.
But as she left, she was heckled with chants of "May must go." Jeremy Corbyn was visibly upset when he arrived. As the constituency MP, he says he knows many who worship here.
The stress levels I've met already from people both last night and this morning who are just frightened that something like this could happen again. And so we obviously need efficient and effective policing. We obviously need also an attitude in our society of support for each other. The only way to deal with this kind of issue is communities coming together.
Extra police patrols have now been promised to protect Muslim communities, particularly while Ramadan, the month of fasting, is ongoing.
This attack behind me on Seven Sisters, the attack in Manchester, the attack on London Bridge, the attack on Westminster Bridge, are all an attack on our shared values of tolerance and freedom and respect. And we will not allow these terrorists to succeed.
Why do you do that? Why? And what more could be in that spirit than protecting the life of a man who seemed to seek to kill you? This is the imam of the mosque, getting the alleged attacker safely into the police van.
By God's grace, we managed to surround him and to protect him from any harm. We stopped all forms of attack and abuse towards him that were coming from every angle. And by coincidence, while the people who were tending to the injured were calling the emergency services, a police van drove past by coincidence, so we flagged them down, we told them the situation.
Meanwhile, the flowers are laid, the candles lit. Another terror attack, another tribute. London mourns again.
Now joining me live here in Finsbury Park are two eyewitnesses, Awais Sheikh Ali Luso and Ahmed Abu Bakr. And I'm also joined by Samira Masad, who filmed the immediate aftermath, and Ali Miliani, who lives locally. Now, let's just start with you. You were inside the welfare centre or the mosque. Where were you actually located?
Actually, we come out of the mosque.
Yes.
Me and the man collapsed. The one died now.
The one who's dead, yes.
The face is that
he was on the pavement.
He's in the pavement. He collapsed by his pavement. So I need the help.
Yeah.
So people, they come to overcrowd the area.
Yes.
And I push the people to give it some air.
Yeah.
So when we give them some air, I know where he lives.
Yes.
So I walk away.
Yes.
Go his door and look at his family.
Yes.
And I call him, come out, your dad is collapsed. So immediately we come out, we come in there, we see the van is crashed all the way around and go inside the police.
Straight at the group of people
Straight
who were looking after the old man?
Yeah.
And went over the old man?
And over the old man, and over the, one of the lady, Mama Hakim or something like that, Somali woman, kicked off younger boy, Moroccan originally, but he born here. And he kicked off one of the brother Ali, and another Sharif Alawi, and the other one is the under of the vans. So we pick up that guy.
Now, Ahmed, you were in a restaurant opposite the welfare centre, right?
Yeah, just next to exactly where the things happen. And in about 1 minute, I was there already. And I've seen already people on the ground screaming, asking for help. And as he said, we were asking people to give air to them. And I was helping like the others who were holding the guy on the floor because there were some kicks coming from every corner. People were so angry, and we were telling just leave him, let him like this until the police come and deal with it. So about 2 or 3 people were holding, and we just trying like to let people not to touch him and this.
Well, now, did he say anything to either of you?
No, we don't say nothing about.
But he was saying something like,
I didn't hear nothing, but maybe
like he was saying,
knows.
I will kill you all of you guys Muslims or something like that. And
well,
maybe.
Samira, when you were filming afterwards with your mobile phone, you heard him saying things, or you heard people, you recorded people who told you what he said.
I had first accounts from close friends who were at the scene at the time when he was being restrained, that he said that this was for London Bridge.
So that's another dimension to the whole thing. This was for London Bridge, and of course,
London Bridge.
The desperate irony is that he used the same device.
Exactly.
But we don't know that for sure, but this is what people said, right? That he said.
This is what he said, and when he was being put down, he said, kill me, don't arrest me, they are the Muslims.
Well, so that's the account that you have from people who were there later, but you were actually there, so did you hear any of that?
You know what I did? Because I said I hold him, the guy. I want to help the people.
Yeah.
So 2 of us, they helped Abdurrahman, another guy. Abdurrahman said, hold him, don't let me down. The guy hold him. He said, okay. I said, don't touch him, the guy. I'm going there. So many people in the pavement. So I have to help each other. So 7 people there. The one died, and the 6 people.
Now, how quickly?
After that, someone called me, said, come here. I'm going there. I see there's someone under the vans.
Oh, under the van?
Yeah, the one younger boy.
Yeah.
So someone called me to help the guy come out.
Yeah.
So I come out, run away.
And you got him out?
Yeah, I come out. I said, no, I'll call the people. It's the van heavy, so I can't hold the guy.
Yes.
So I'll call the people, we push the van, we take it off the guy. After that, I come back, I call him, Abdurrahman, the other guy. I said, please hold him, this guy, and don't.
We understand there are at least 10 injured and 2 of them critically tonight.
Yep.
But I'm just wondering whether how quickly the ambulance was there. Were they there quickly?
No, they did not come quick. We called them.
Police were quick.
No, and the first thing, the police arrived, and I think it was just only one van with 2 guys. They didn't do any much because the numbers of the people were a bit quite.
So we're going to have to leave it there, but we get a sense of the mayhem that was there. Thank you very much indeed, all 3 of you, for joining us. Well, now, as we've seen, the Prime Minister and the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, who represents the local area, have both visited Finsbury Park Mosque today and spoken to local faith leaders and residents. Our correspondent Kamian Zeram has spent the day in the area assessing the mood of the community, and he too has spoken to many people from inside the Finsbury Park Mosque.
The how, the why, and the what next. The damage that's done to people's lives, to communities, with a vehicle apparently being used as a weapon to sow terror.
So another alleged terror attack on the streets of Britain. Men and women leaving their place of worship, apparently mown down by a man driving a van, with appalling consequences. And what people here want to know is, how can they be kept safe?
Since the Manchester and London bridge attacks by Islamist extremists, hate crimes against Muslims have spiked. Politicians came to Finsbury Park's main mosque to try and reassure, with last night still raw.
So one side of the pavement, bodies on the road, 2 bodies on the other side of the road, and on that other side of the pavement, I mean, bodies. It was just madness.
What did you think had happened?
I don't know. It looked like someone got a bulldozer and just took everybody out.
The people who's victim there, some of them my neighbor in the hospital. All of them.
You know some of them?
Of course, especially the man who died.
You know the man who died?
I know. No, I don't. I know him because all the time he was on the street. He walked in the mosque and all the time up and down. I know him on the street because he lives in this area.
Who was he? What's his?
He's Somali anyway. He's our community.
Britain's Muslims feel vulnerable and exposed, with more police now promised to protect mosques.
Faith institutions, especially within the Muslim community, we tend to trust more than needed, so we don't really put security outside. We don't really think that far ahead because we just believe that everyone's going to be fine, just like we're not doing anything bad, no one else is going to do anything bad to us.
Terrorism is terrorism. The leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, was here also as local MP. These are his constituents. And meeting the Prime Minister, faith leaders from across London.
She's engaged with the community, spoken to people who are in the community, and that will reassure communities.
You think it will reassure communities?
I think...
Are you reassured?
I think the response has been that communities feel that she's taking this seriously. I think the real fear was that this would not be seen as a terror attack.
But how to reassure, how to protect in a climate like today's, with an attack against one, an attack against all. Kami Enzeram, Channel 4 News, Finsbury Park.
Kami Enzeram reporting. Well, now, a little earlier I spoke to the Security Minister, Ben Wallace. He was down at Westminster, and I began by asking him if he could now confirm that this is definitely being treated as an act of terrorism.
Yes, we can, and it's no ifs, no buts. This individual sought to use terror and twisted logic to go about killing and attacking innocent people.
Now, this occurred, almost precisely on the anniversary of the terrorist attack by a white man on Joe Cox, which was an act of terrorism. Do you think you have the extreme right in your sights? Are you giving them enough attention?
Well, we are giving them enough attention. I have them absolutely in my sights. In December last year, I prescribed the far-right group National Action for the very first time, put them in the same bundle as we put Al-Qaeda and IS. We make sure that the PREVENT scheme covers both far-right and any other forms of violent extremism. And what we've seen is where PREVENT is working well, people are referred into Channel, and in some parts of the United Kingdom there are more far-right referrals into the Channel than there are Islamist extremism.
What scale do you regard the extreme right as being?
Well, we at the moment don't see them as organised as, for example, other terrorist groups, but what we certainly see them is taking advantage of the internet and social media to be more organised than they've ever been before, to be more slicker in their grooming.
The Security Minister, Ben Wallace, talking to me earlier from Westminster.
Tonight's main news, a man held by police as a suspect over the Finsbury Park van attack has been named as Darren Osborne from Cardiff. 1 man died and 10 others were injured when a van apparently swerved onto a pavement and into a crowd of Muslim worshippers who just finished late evening prayers for Ramadan. Well, we're joined again with more news from Cardiff by our Home Affairs correspondent, Andy Davies. So, Andy, tell us about this breaking news tonight.
Well, we've heard that the sister of Darren Osborne has given a statement this evening in which she says she's very sorry for what's happened, speaking on behalf of the family at the home in Weston-super-Mare where reportedly Darren Osborne comes from originally. I've been speaking to some of the neighbours here, and we're hearing accounts that he had been here this weekend. This is his next-door neighbour speaking to me a short while ago, who said that he was there, she could hear him singing Sunday lunchtime.
Basically just everyday normal guy, and it's like he was always pleasant to me. If I see him outside, say hello, good morning, good night, that's it. And it's just, he seemed like, you know, every day take the kids for a walk, dogs for a walk, and, you know, just, he didn't say anything bad to us or be bad to us or anything.
But another potentially significant account is emerging. One resident here says that he was walking back on Saturday night, late Saturday night, saw a white van outside his house with the branding Pontyclean Van Hire, the one associated with the incident last night. He said that he looked inside, the passenger door was open, there was a man asleep at the wheel. He nudged him a couple of times, he just grunted in return. This resident then says that he called 101, spoke to the police and informed them about this. He's not clear whether the police responded in any way. He went to sleep and didn't see the van after that. I've put this to South Wales Police, but we don't have any response from them on this as of yet.
Andy Davies, thank you very much for joining us.